I've got 6 o'clock, and that was our advertised start time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for attending. It's an excellent crowd. I've been in smaller, I should say, I've been in bigger communities with smaller crowds, so it's a delight to see such a good crowd here this evening. My name is Harry Otto. I serve as deputy to State Auditor Harry. That's my job as deputy, and I do some of these public deliveries. Tom was doing one last night at the Oliver Reserve, so that kind of kept him out of the mix tonight, so that's why I'm here. I have with me Connie James. Connie was what we call the auditor in charge on this occasion, so she was the one that spent the time in the community working on the audit. And I have with me also this evening Jeff Earl, who works in the Jefferson City office with me, and he's running the camera. I'll tell you how the meeting kind of works. We'll go through the findings, the audit recommendations. We'll have time for questions. We hope the questions are of broad interest, not some little specific matter. We'll try to stay away from those tiny matters, but more specific and general questions. This is what we call petition audit. There were enough citizens in the community. It took 227 signatures for us to show up. There were 255 valid signatures, so there were more than enough. The number of signatures required based upon the size of the community, the size of the number of voters registered, how many voted in the last election, so you had more than enough. And once a political subdivision comes up with enough signatures, we don't have a choice. We have to come. That's our duty as the state auditor's office. We have to show up as soon as we can. We do have to move the schedule and get here. We considered all the concerns that were raised by the chief petitioner, but ultimately the scope of our audit is determined by where the evidence of the information leads us. We don't let the community or the patrons or the chief petitioner write the audit program for us. We know what we need to look for after we show up and start to see things. The period that was audited was the year ended, fiscal year ended February 13th, February 28th and 13th. We would note any pertinent issues that would come up after that date. We just don't close the door on that date, not look on this side of it. We would rise and things on this side. Generally, issues that came and went before that year started are outside the scope of the audit. There were over 520 hours spent on the audit. At the beginning, or actually before the beginning of the audit, we estimated that the cost would be somewhere between $15,000 to $35,000 to do the audit. It's going to come in at about $24,000, so it's about midpoint of the range that we published when we signed the petition. A number of issues were discovered, so we found no evidence of fraud or theft. That doesn't say that it absolutely never happened, but we found no evidence of it. We always hope on these petition audits that the scope, our focus will be improving the operations of the political subdivision, in this case, the Public Water Supply District, improve the operations for the future. The overall rating, and Tom Schweik came up with this approach. He likes to put a rating on audits, and we rated this a fair. Now, you can have a poor, fair, good, or excellent. Excellence are probably unheard of on petition audits, because if it was excellent, there would be no reason to probably show up. And that's 0 findings is what it takes to have excellence. So there's never been an excellent petition audit grade coming out of our office. There's maybe only a very small handful of good. Fair is not so bad for a petition audit. I've delivered a number of these, and only 2 of them have been fair. Most of them have been poor. So the grade, if you want to know what the grade was, and it shows up on the blue sheet. The blue sheet was fair. Now, public deliveries usually run about an hour, give or take. You have with you the blue sheet. You have what we call a citizen summary, and then you have the entire audit. And we're going to go through it. And I'll try to reference a page number every once in a while so we can kind of play together. My last delivery was a 35-page report. This was about half that size, so, and I got through that one in less than an hour up here in Savannah. There are 8 findings that we're going to go through, and inside those 8 findings are 22 separate recommendations. We'll run through those. We'll have time for questions at the end. So we're going to start on your page 4 of your white sheets, I think. That's the first area of findings under accounting controls, policies, and procedures. We talk about the segregation of duties and the supervisory reviews. The general manager or clerk is responsible for all record keeping, including receiving and depositing monies, recording receipts and disbursements, preparing and distributing checks, receiving bank statements, preparing bank reconciliations, preparing financial statements, signing checks, limited supervisory review. We talked about receiving and recording procedures. The general manager clerk needs to improve the receiving and recording procedures. The general manager clerk does not restrictively endorse checks immediately upon receipt. The same person can assign the posting date of payments, and the computer system does not record the composition of receipts, whether it's cash, checks, money orders, so they can't be reconciled with the composition of the deposit. Some of the payments were not posted in the customer accounts, but only recorded in the general ledger, resulting in invalid account receivable balance. We talked about petty cash. I'm on page 5 now. The district did not maintain a $200 petty cash fund at a constant level. Our cash count, petty cash count, totaled $144. When we did the count, this charge of $56. Later, there was $45 found by the general manager clerk at her home, which she said was planned to be used for petty cash purchases. At 1.4, we talked about inactive bank accounts. The district maintained 3 inactive bank accounts with a total balance of a little over $22,000 from prior bond covenants. Each could be closed, should be closed. The only activity that was taking place in those 3 accounts was a little bit of interest income that was returned. Under expenditures at 1.5, we mentioned that the district did not always obtain adequate supporting documentation, whether it's invoices, work orders, or expenditures. And at 1.6, now on your page 6, we mentioned that given the significant control and weaknesses, the bond coverage for the general manager clerk we think is insufficient. She's bonded for $25,000, but handles monthly receipts from $70,000 to $100,000 each and every month. And the last finding in the area of 1.7, data backup. The district did not store backup data at an off-site location. The backup data is not periodically tested or stored on reliable media. In June of 2012, the district lost about 3 months of data due to a power failure. It could not restore the data from the backup disk. The data had to be re-entered from hard copy reports. So those are the things we talked about under finding 1, when we do the recommendation and apply in the district. So under 1.1, we say that the districts should segregate accounting duties to the extent possible or establish a documented independent review. I'm on page 6 now. We always make a recommendation and ask for a reply from the political subdivision. In this case, the reply is the segregation of duties is not feasible, but the district will review the general manager and clerk's work. Under 1.2, also on page 6, our recommendation is that they restrictively endorse checks upon receipt, deposit the monies timely, enter accurate posting dates, record the composition of the payments, whether they're cash, check, money order, post all payments to the customer's accounts. The response was to accept that recommendation. On page 7, 1.3, we said maintain the petty cash at a constant level, retain allowable use of those excess funds. There's 3 accounts that we just sort of sitting there, consider closing those inactive accounts. The response was the board will review the covenants and co-mingle, in other words, bring all those accounts in, which is what we want to see. Under 1.5, we said retain detailed supporting documents for all expenditures, and the board says they now review and retain invoices for all checks signed at the board meetings. At 1.6, we suggested to increase the bond coverage. We talked about $25,000 handle, but the response from the board was they believe that the current bond level is sufficient. And finally, at 1.7, we said store that backup data at reliable media at a secure off-site location and test it regularly. And the response was it's now backed up on thumb drive, take it home, or a manager or director, and it will be tested. So that failure to the loss of data that we entered, that should be behind. Going to page 8, we'll talk about the water system and water rates. The district raised its water rates 4% in August of 2011, but its cost analysis was inadequate. Bond covenants require the district to maintain rates that produce sufficient revenues to pay for the operating expenses, pay the principal and interest on bonds, pay for system improvements, and provide for adequate reserves. The analysis that was done did not include some information such as future capital improvements. Under 2.2, the improvement plan, the district had not developed a formal capital improvement plan for the water plant and the distribution systems and has not adjusted water rates for immediate improvements. In November of 2012, the district obtained an engineering study regarding needed improvements. The study proposed a $600,000 in immediate improvements and $4.4 million in long-term improvements. Recommended increasing rates by 70 cents per 1,000 gallons. The district has not done so. So our recommendations under 2.1, I'm on page 9 now. 2.1 is to prepare an adequate rate study that considers all the relevant expenses and reserves, and the response from the board was we accept that recommendation. At 2.2, we talked about our suggestion was to prepare a formal capital improvement plan and periodically update the plan and the rates as required. The response, the board will assess the merits of a 5-year capital improvement plan and will consider any recommendations made by its engineers. We're still on page 9 going to budgets, item 3. The annual budgets do not include all the elements required by section 67.1010 revised statutes of Missouri. Under budget monitoring, the board does not monitor the budget to actual revenue and expenditures. The board approved expenditures exceeding budgeted expenditures by over $36,000 for the year ended February 13th. And chapter 67.080 revised Missouri statute provides that no expenditures of public money shall be made unless authorized in the budget. Our recommendations on page 10 at 3.1, we say prepare annual budgets that contain all the information required by state law. The board replied, the board accepts the recommendation. And at 3.2, monitor the budget to actual monthly, ensure the actual expenditures do not exceed budgeted amounts, and amend the budget as necessary. The response from the board will review and, if appropriate, amend the budget on a quarterly basis. We went on to say that to do monthly or to amend it on a monthly basis would be overly burdensome. We're still on page 10, finding 4 public records. The district has not adopted a formal policy regarding public access to district records. The policy should identify the contact person, provide the mailing address, individual, someone requests district records. So our recommendation there is develop a written policy and procedures to obtain access to or copies of public district records. The response from the audit team is the board will review Chapter 16.023, which is what we call the Sunshine Chapter. The board will review that and develop written policies and procedures concerning it. We're on page 11, and we're talking about timesheets. We're talking about personnel records, policies, and procedures, and the first thing is timesheets. The general manager clerk does not complete a timesheet. Employees do not always accurately complete and sign their timesheets, and supervisors do not adequately review and approve timesheets. And 5.2 under leave from page 11. The district does not always follow its personnel policy when calculating leave balances and paying leave to employees. We identified instances of non-compliance with district policy due to leave usage and current balances not being kept up to date, employees allowed to use 1/2 hour increments for leave, vacation leave not always forfeited on the employee's anniversary dates as called for in policy, sick leave not being paid out on the employee's anniversary dates. One employee was underpaid $344 upon termination. Two other employees were improperly paid a total of $2,143 for accrued vacation leave in addition to accrued sick leave. At 5.3, under performance appraisals, we're on page 10. The district does not prepare performance appraisals as required by district policy. The employee manual provides each employee be reviewed and evaluated each January. The general manager clerk said appraisals have not been prepared for several years, and the board has not formally evaluated her performance for several years. Under 5.4, personnel files, individual personnel files do not contain documentation of approved salaries and any adjustments, job application, job description, resumes, training records as required by the employee policy manual. Under 5.5, under health insurance reimbursement, the district needs to maintain more complete and detailed documentation to support the employee health insurance reimbursement payments. The district reimbursed employees $10,589 for their health insurance premium expenses, but the documentation from the insurance companies was not always sufficient to support these reimbursements. Page 13, the commuting and district vehicle. The district does not report the value of personal commuting in a district vehicle as compensation to the employee. IRS guidelines indicate personal commuting mileage is a reportable fringe benefit. The district may be subject to penalties and/or fines for failure to report all taxable benefits. So our recommendations under Area 5 on page 13, 5.1, require all employees prepare and sign their timesheets. Supervisors review and approve their timesheets. And the board president review and approve the general manager clerk's timesheet. The response from the board is that the board accepts the recommendations for hourly employees and for the manager to the extent she records information regarding vacation and sick leave. At 5.2, we suggest properly track, monitor, and handle employee balances. The response, the board accepts this recommendation. Under 5.3, we say complete, formal, documented employee performance appraisals annually, including the general manager clerk. The response from the board accepts the recommendation. 4, we say ensure all information required by district policy is contained in the individual personnel files. The response is the board accepts the recommendation. We're on page 14 now, I think, at 5.5. Our recommendation is maintain adequate documentation to support the health insurance reimbursements. The response is the manager will request an annual report from each employee's insurer. And finally, at 5.6 in this area, we say report the value of commuting use in a district vehicle as taxable income and withhold related taxes. The board should reconsider allowing the district vehicle to be used for personal use. Here's the response. The board does not consider the use of a company vehicle by the manager as commuting since she was on call 24/7, and the manager provides security for the vehicle during non-business hours by keeping it at her home. The board will confer with the district CPA to further review the IRS regulations. Finding 6 deals with purchasing at the bottom of page 14. The district does not follow its purchasing policy in all cases. The policy requires at least 2 quotes for purchases between $300 and $10,000, at least 2 written quotations for purchases between $10,001 and $100,000, and it requires formal bidding for purchases in excess of $100,000. It requires board approval for purchases over $10,000. There is no need in their policy for competitive quotes or bids needed for sole source or emergency procurements. The district did not request a quote or document the reason for a sole source or emergency purchase for several purchases, including on page 15. These were some of those expenditures. Rebuild the pump for $6,525, line for $5,944, inspection water towers $4,750. The district does not solicit proposals for its attorney or its outside auditor. Our recommendation there is that the board solicit quotes, bids, proposals in accordance with its policy, maintain sufficient documentation for the sole source and emergency procurements. The response from the auditee is the board accepts the recommendation. We're going to page 16 and talk about vehicle usage logs and fuel purchases. Usage mileage logs do not always include the purpose and the documentation of each trip, beginning and ending kilometer readings, a record of the vehicle mileage each time the vehicle is fueled or has maintenance performed. No log is maintained for one of the vehicles. And under fuel purchases, employees are not required to submit fuel tickets for fuel credit card purchases, so the general manager clerk does not reconcile fuel tickets with credit card statements. Our recommendations with respect to the vehicle usage are, number 1, and we're on page 17. I think it's responsible. We say maintain detailed and uniform fuel usage mileage logs, review and evaluate and reconcile the fuel purchase. The response, the board will review current practices and develop policy and procedures for documenting fuel usage mileage logs. Our second recommendation said require fuel tickets to be submitted and reconciled with the monthly billing. The response was the board accepts the recommendation. Our final finding is with respect to board training, page 17. The board does not ensure its members obtain the training required by state law. Section 247.060 of the revised statutes of Missouri requires board members to complete a minimum of 6 hours of training before they can receive any compensation, even mileage compensation. So our recommendation there is to ensure that each board member receives the required training and maintain those training records. The response from the board is that the board accepts the recommendation. Now, we've gone through 22 recommendations inside these 8 findings. Started by my count, there's either a yes, we'll follow your recommendation, or kind of indication we will in about 20 of those 22 recommendations. So that's pretty good. There's 2 that there was not so much agreement on. One was the bonding. We suggested additional bonding for the employee that handles Carroll County cash, fair amount of money. And the board pushed back on that one a little bit, saying we thought the bonding was sufficient. And the other one was dealt with the fringe benefit of the vehicle. We say we think our interpretation of Internal Revenue Code and taxability fringe benefit is such, and the board said they'll check with their CPA and see what they'll do at that point. So you might say there's 2 that we're still dancing on. One of the things that Tom Schweik has done since he's been there is institute something called the follow-up board, the follow-up audit. But we usually reserve those for boards and what we call low fares. We talked about this being fair grade. If it were a poor grade, we'd be back in 90 to 120 days to see whether or not the recommendations have been implemented. I don't think we have to pull the follow-up trigger necessarily on this one, because it just doesn't meet the criteria of requiring us to follow it. It's our own imposed requirement, so I guess we could if we wanted to. I don't see it at this point as a necessary trip back to do that. Okay, I've been through it actually less than half an hour, which is pretty good. As I said last time, it's 34 pages. This is, I'm sorry. Done much better than the city of Savannah. So now I'll take questions. Be happy to take questions. And if I can't answer them, that's why I have Connie here, because she actually got her hand dirty with this one. She's been working on this. Yes, ma'am.
I have a bit of a problem with the board's response to section 5.1. The board says they accept the recommendation in 5.1 for all hourly employees. The board also accepts the recommendation for a salaried manager to the limited extent that she report information on her timesheet regarding vacation and sick leave only, which will be reviewed and approved by the board president. I'm sorry, I can't accept that. My money pays her salary. By golly, I want to know how many hours she works. And as a board, they need to be knowing how many hours she works. They are her boss. And to just put down sick leave and vacation time only, I don't care if she works 8 hours or 10 hours. There still needs to be a record. I don't know of any place that you work that you don't have some sort of timesheet or something that says, hey, this is how many hours you work.
Well, you heard the lady's comments. You saw our recommendation. I will say that in administrative and executive positions, sometimes when people, they were called in from an emergency at 8 o'clock one night and worked till 10 and then went back home. And then they came in the next morning at 2 hours later because they spent 2 hours in the middle of the night working. You could argue, okay, I want to see the 2 hours extra the one day and the 2 hours less the next day, or you can pay them a salary for the month just to get the job. And that's the question to come up with in some of these administrative and executive positions, whether or not you can track every hour. see their pushback, or not pushback, but their reply. It is what it is. Yes, sir.
Is there overtime on a salary position?
You know, there are exemptions to salary positions, supervisory positions, so I'm suggesting, or I believe, I hope I'm not too far out of line here, but the general manager of an operation like this who has supervisory duties would not be paid overtime. They're paid to do the job.
I understand.
From the beginning of the month to the end of the month, here's your salary for doing the job that month. If you took more time to do it that month, that's just on you. You have to pay, you're paid to get the job done. I have one of those jobs. This is what I'm going to be paid, and I got to get the job done. If that job takes me to a small town up in north central Missouri one evening, that's just part of the
You
job.
probably get in some 5 or 6 hour days too, don't you?
No, I'm not too often. Now, maybe when the sun's shining on a Thursday afternoon, I might slip out of it. Yes.
When did she become a salaried employee?
Can you help me there, Connie?
As you say, I don't have that information in front of me right now.
If you give us your name afterwards, I'll be happy to.
I'm Jenny Rodenberg, and I worked there. She was not a salaried employee. She's paid by the hour. She was paid overtime.
Okay.
So the salaried employee, she should have to be accountable for her hours, just like a regular employee.
If she's a salaried employee, you should know her salary, shouldn't you?
Well, here's where we'll get into semantics. When you say salary, some people have an idea that that's per week, per month, per year. Is it a salary or is it a wage? You know, many of the world thinks that wage is by the hour, salary's by the.
If you're general manager, you'd have a salary, wouldn't you? If you're
Generally
paying so
speaking.
much money a month, it'd be so much money a month, isn't it?
That's generally, that's what I started over here with. That's generally the situation. When you have someone who supervises others, they don't get paid overtime, don't get paid time and a half for overtime, it's for the job to be done. Now, maybe this is not the case here. I see someone shaking their head no. But that's generally the case.
The salary, it should be about the same amount every month, shouldn't it? Unless they get a raise.
Yes.
Are we entitled to know what the salary is?
You're absolutely, what's the question?
39,000 or something.
We put
My
some-
question was, are we as general public entitled to know what that salary is?
You are absolutely entitled to know. You're entitled to know what's budgeted and what's actual, if it exceeds, if it's higher or lower. You guys as patrons, as payers, as of the district, have the right to see all of that information. Matter of fact, one of our findings was tell the patrons who to contact if they have questions. You know, who's the keeper of the records? It should be obvious, or it should be well known if you make a call. I'd like to know this, this, and this. And unless you're making them do extra work and run and find records that they don't have, they generally just have to make them available to you. Now, if you're saying, I want to know what this was from here to here and here to here, and you make them do a lot of running around, they can charge you for that. But the sunshine statute is there to shine the sun on the records. Yeah, we do note a salary at the, you know, back in the statistical section, and whether that's the right terminology. You know, we were critical about the personnel file in terms of resumes, applications, appraisals being deficient. The board said they would address that. Another question?
What, maybe you can answer, what's our water rate running for 100 an hour per gallon? Is that,
The ask was, what's our water rates? You know, I do not know what your water rates are. You'd almost have to ask one of your one of your operations people, and maybe you can look at the bill, I guess, if it says it.
I can do that.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm probably putting my foot in my mouth again, but, why does the board think that $25,000 is enough bonding for her when she's handling these large amounts of money coming in?
I think that's a good question to address to the board, because you saw that we requested or suggested increase because of the size of the dollars that she handles. Now, maybe on any one day, she can't handle more than that money, she won't handle on any one day, but on a monthly period or over a period of time, it's over $1 million a year, I guess, right? Is that what do we have a
Yeah.
financial statement in the back? But, you know, as a practical matter, no one could walk away, and I'm not suggesting anyone would, with all the money, replace with
I
flat
mean,
sharp.
you could have the most honest person and they'd still have to have that bonding no matter what.
True, and whether you had the most scrupulous, honest, decent, absolute perfect person, they would still be bonded. I mean, the board could not be doing their fiduciary duty if they did not have some bonding on the employees that handle the funds.
No, but 25,000 is not enough considering the amount of money that comes through that office.
I think you should make your, and you have, made your thoughts public, and ours public by saying we suggested a higher coverage. It gets cooler in here when that thing pushes ball. Yes, sir.
Getting back to that bonding thing, I'd like to know what the board's response is. As I understand it, getting bonded is kind of like buying insurance. I'd like to know how come the board doesn't want to be insured enough. And I'd like for each board member to address that right now.
Well, let me stop you there. We're not here to referee anything tonight. We're here to present our audit. That's what we've done. We're not going to get into a ping pong or a tennis match here, going back and forth. This is our meeting tonight, and I appreciate you being here. Now, if you want those kind of answers, I suggest you show up at a board meeting, a regularly scheduled meeting, and make those. I'm not trying to cut you off, although it sounds like I am, but I don't want to. We don't allow these meetings to just become that way.
Well, maybe they could address that in the media, how come they don't insure themselves. You have the radio, we have the internet, we have the newspaper.
Right.
We are a public entity, we have the right to know things.
I mentioned that before, you have a right to know all the information.
And I also,
all the dollars.
while I'm asking questions, I would like to know how many board members actually have 6 hours of board training, and are they doing anything to follow up on their education? And I say that because I used to serve on Carroll School Board, and we had to have X number of hours of board training before we would even be allowed to serve.
We cited the statute that requires the 6 hours. We have a response from the board that they accept our recommendation that sure, members receive the required training and maintain the training records.
So in other words, a lot of the board members do not have that said training.
That's accurate.
What's that?
He said a lot. I'm an accountant, so when somebody says to me a lot of them, I'd like to know what a lot means.
I would like to know how many have board training and how many do not. And that should be made public.
Okay. Let me give you my business card when I leave. I will drill into that, but once again, I don't have that information. How many of the board members were?
Well, you could follow it up on the website for the state auditors on this. And then I have all sorts of questions. I have another question.
Go ahead.
They said that the board doesn't accept the recommendation on adjusting their budget monthly to monthly. They want to do it quarterly. I don't understand that. If they have good records, they'd be able to adjust their budget monthly.
Perhaps that's true, here's the deal, you can't spend more than the budget allows, that's what the law says, or what the budget provides. So if they don't adjust the budget quarterly, and they need to spend more money than the budget shows, they can't do it without breaking the law.
But I think what he's trying to say is, wouldn't it be easier to do it month by month, like you suggested, instead of by quarter?
You know, depending on the size of the organization, how many items are going over budget, if it's unusual for something to go over budget, addressing it every month might be overkill. You can address it whenever it's needed. Sometimes you might even, if you've done a really good job with the budget and a really good job of controlling your expenditures, you don't have a budget adjustment at all that year. You can, if everything's coming in under budget and things are sailing along smoothly, there will be no need for a budget adjustment. But when you're hit with repairs or that exceed the budget amount, you're going to have to stop spending when you hit the budget limit unless you adjust the budget. Whether you do it monthly, quarterly, or whenever. Sometimes you can do it in an emergency session. You can just call an emergency meeting and say, look, we've got to fix this thing. We're losing money, we're losing product. Let's fix it. Let's have an emergency meeting and amend the budget and okay the expenditure. That would probably happen if something dramatic occurred. Yes, sir.
Years ago, I was on the board, so, and we had a bond for, in case we had a catastrophic, earthquake, anything like that. And back then, it had to be like over 200,000, if I remember correctly. Do we still have that?
You mentioned bond, but you're probably talking insurance, aren't you?
It was a fund, I think. We had $200 and some thousand in a catastrophic fund in case there was major earthquake or something break down for repair. How did that go? I don't see it in there.
We could look at the financial statement to see if the reserves are such that there's that much there. It's a good question to ask the folks that run the district. We don't have the financials here. That's a good question to address to the outside.
I'm sorry?
We do not have the financial statements here.
Well, to my understanding, it's not there anymore. What happened to it?
I can't answer your question.
The audit didn't show that?
No, as I said, we looked at 1 year.
Can we get a financial statement?
We get it first.
Why did we have 3 accounts, and where is our present account at?
Well, here's the way I'm going out on a limb here, but often when you have a bond issue, you set up an account, you always be sure you have enough money in that account to pay the interest and principal as it becomes due on that outstanding bond. Right? You always keep enough money there. Well, at some point the bond gets paid off and you still got a few bucks sitting in that account. Well, that happened here 3 times. There's 3 different accounts with dollars sitting in each one of those 3, and the bonds have been paid off. All right? So there's extra money. And we're saying that we have 3 dormant accounts sitting there, and all they're doing is collecting a little bit of interest, and the bonds have been paid off. It's time to get rid of those 3 accounts. That's just asking for potential trouble when you have 3 dormant accounts. So the board agreed to address that situation. Use the term commingle, which I don't really like that term, because it sounds like you're putting the wrong kind of things together. But we always, as a practical matter, what the board puts as a response, that's what we print. We don't tell them what to say. So if they say they're going to commingle that, we see that as, okay, they're just going to put it in one account. Maybe include it in operations if it's not needed for bonds. That's how that happens.
Is it in Carroll County or is it Livingston County?
It's in the district. It's part of, I mean, where is it? Ask your manager where the account, where they keep their bank accounts, what bank they bank with. Or maybe there's more than one. There might be capital account, operation account. Or you can just say, look, I want to see the audited financial statement of the CPA. You can just see it there. You have the right to see the audited financial statement that's prepared by the CPA. I suspect you have to have a CPA audit because you do still have these outstanding bonds. And as a condition of having these bonds, you're required to have an audit. Because that whoever is sitting there holding those bonds, and maybe some of you have some, you want to know sure, you want to be very sure that your investment is good, that you're going to get your principal and interest.
When do they do their yearly financial statement balance sheet? When is that, when do they do that?
Well, that's, the year end is February 28th, right? February 28th is the year end of the fiscal year of the district.
They should have a financial, bond or a annual statement prepared shortly afterwards? Is that
Yes,
correct?
yeah, you can always ask for the 228 of 13, there'll be another 228 of 14. Like there are interim statements too, that you as a patron, if you're a patron of the district, you have a right to know the interim statements. You won't have to wait a year to see them come in.
We used to have an audit, year-end audit, or whatever you want to call it, by Scott Stevens, Chillicothe. Is that still in effect? And we have, did you see any results of that or anything?
I was gonna say, yesterday, Scott Stevens performed the audit, and we did receive that audit report. So,
We did see it, when as we did the audit, we saw that there was, if we would have noticed that a required CPA audit wasn't being done, that would have been a finding. We would have said, look, you're violating your bond covenants by not having an audit. We didn't say that. That tells us there was more prepared, whether it's the same CPA or, I think we mentioned in here that they didn't bid their legal bar audit. One of the things we like to see public entities do is bid that work. Every once in a while, not just go back to the same attorney, go back to the same CPA and say, do it again like you did last year. Once in a while, you shop around and ask for a bid and see if you can get a better price. Any other questions? If you have a question that you didn't want to ask here or you think about later, don't hesitate to go to auditor.mo.gov. Auditor.mo.gov. You go there, you can find me there. I'll get a few cards out of here. You can go back to your district and say, how can I get a hold of the folks that were there, give you the presentation, come back to us that way. If you need another copy of the report, you can actually go to the website and download the audited financial statement of what we're doing here tonight. That'll be on there. You can pull that down anytime, print it off, and it's on the copy. It's there for you to see. Any other questions? This is a great crowd. This is going to be the best sized crowd for the size of the entity that I think that we've had the pleasure of speaking to. So I really appreciate you coming out.